Lots of people talk about chasing their dreams, but how many actually do it? Welcome to the Pursue Your Passion podcast with Tyler Kammerman. We're going to introduce you to people who are intentionally pursuing their passion every day. Through their stories of success and their struggles, you'll gain insight into how to better begin or continue your journey. Now here's Tyler with today's guest.
Welcome back, passionate pursuers of passions. I don't know if that works or not. I got to work on that.
It's
intro.
alliterative, if nothing else.
There's a lot of P's there. Hey, I'm really excited to have you along with me today and excited to have my guest, Dave Price, with me. Dave is WHO 13 for those outside of Des Moines. That is the NBC affiliate here in the Des Moines metro area. He's WHO 13's political director, managing editor, host, and executive producer of the Sunday community affairs show, The Insiders, and WHO 13's Sunday evening news anchor. It's difficult to find a local television reporter in the United States who spent more time covering presidential candidates than Dave. Dave grew up in Belleville, Illinois. Did I say that right?
Belleville, right?
Belleville, all right. Where he formed his passion in politics. Hey, there's that P word, y'all. and his beloved St. Louis Cardinals from his dad. Dave has won a national Emmy, Edward R. Murrow, and dozens of state and regional awards for his reporting, writing, and anchoring. He's written 2 books, Caucus Chaos and Caucus Chaos Trump. Both share Dave's experience covering the always unpredictable way Iowans help pick the next president. He loves speaking to groups, sharing his experiences, and listening to the ideas of others. He lives in Urbandale with his wife, Emily, son, Hayden, daughter, Lila, and energetic dog, Hattie. Our home lives are similar, just Urbandale and Clive.
Chaotic.
And chaotic.
We just moved from Clive.
Oh, did you?
A couple months back, yeah.
Nice. Very nice. Well, welcome to the show, Dave.
Hey, great to be here.
Happy to have you along for the ride. As you can tell from his intro, Dave brings some experience that we haven't had on the show before, which is one of the main reasons that I reached out to him. So, Dave, I'm just going to kind of jump in. You're a broadcaster, you're an author, you're a political expert. Tell us about the passion or passions that you are passionately pursuing right now.
I think everything for me would come down to people. I'm not going to say people person because that's probably some LinkedIn profile or something, right? People have hopefully moved on from calling themselves people.
Right, people.
Yes. But really that's what I like about politics. That's what I like about sports. And that's just the human being, characters, personalities, strategies, why people do stuff. That has always interested me. And I remember going back too long, but when I was in undergrad at Southern Illinois University at Edwardsville, I worked at a Hardee's, and in high school I had worked at a Hardee's also. But fast forward, so it's my sophomore year at SIUE, and there was this elderly woman named Frances Hienemeyer, one of the sweetest people I've ever met in my life. She had lost her husband. She had lost her son, going through a lot of stuff. But she would come into Hardee's 3 or 4 times a day, ate almost all of her meals there, got her coffee all the time. It was always half and half water, half coffee. I totally still remember it. She got a biscuit in the morning. She's just super, super sweet. She loaned me money one time because I stupidly, this is more than you care to know, but
this is good.
Freshman year in college, I lived at home because of a girl who was a year younger than I. And my parents lived 35 minutes from where my college was. And I had a bunch of scholarships. I made money that year, if you will. I had all kinds of extra money, right? So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go do the real experience. We had long since broken up. So I go move on campus for sophomore year. Didn't realize that some of the scholarships I had were freshmen only. The short of it is things got all jacked up. My financial aid package was delayed by a couple months for some reason. And I was broke as broke. That's why I went to Hardee's, where I did not want to have to work. And I met Frances, and she just had a way of making you open up. And I was in a bad spot.
Yeah.
So I was super broke. And I remember she loaned me money. But anyway, we became very close, and her late son was also named David, and I think that was where we
Connection
kind
there.
of connected. But one of the things she had always talked about for advice was when you're out on a date, pay attention to how your date treats the people around her.
Mm.
The waitress, the bank teller, whatever it is, right? And I have always remembered that. And to this day, that's how I really observe politicians. I'm not sure I should say this now because now this is on the record.
Yeah. Oh,
But
that's good.
I'm fascinated by it. And hopefully my boss never listens to this, but I am way more interested in how a person behaves off camera. So we've been fortunate to be in Iowa where we get to interview presidential candidates all the time and all these people of prominence, whatever, business leaders, political figures, whatever. But, some of them have a personality that comes out when the camera comes on, and then there's something else, elsewhere. And so that has always intrigued me. So sort of enveloping all of this is just kind of my love for finding answers and kind of what makes things tick. And I think that's why I'm a sports fan. I like politics. I mean, that sort of strategy behind everything and the characters and the personalities and why you do things. I think that's what all comes together for me.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, and I know for the majority of the time that I've been back in Des Moines, I shouldn't say I know. I think for the majority of the time that I've been back in Des Moines, you have had the insiders and you've been
for almost 10 years.
Okay. Yep. So so not the whole time. I'm glad I switched that to I think because I moved back in 2009. Now, prior to that, tell us maybe a little bit of how you started in broadcasting and maybe the gap between where you started and kind of where you are now.
I grew up in the St. Louis area in Belleville, as you mentioned, and wanted to be. I didn't have the talent to be a sports athlete, a professional athlete, nowhere near the talent, and wanted to be a sports broadcaster. So I grew up listening to the Cardinals on the radio.
Okay.
My uncle gave me an old AM radio that I used to have in my bedroom. People listening can Google what a radio is. Those who are under about 25. It was this white old radio that he got at an auction. So I used to listen to the Cardinals, and if you're a Cardinals fan, you know who some of these people are. But Whitey Herzog used to be the Cardinal manager a long time ago. My grandma actually babysat him when he was a little boy with his brother.
That's fantastic.
And so we've been like Cardinals history is just sort of part of my family history going way back. Where was I even going with this story? I've lost myself here.
You're good.
But I really
love sports.
It's all sports. So I really wanted to do that, and so then the station I grew up listening to, I ended up working. I started a job there in undergrad and loved it. I didn't love the hours. I worked overnights.
Sure.
But totally loved it. And then at my college radio station, I was doing the overnight shift at the public radio station doing jazz. And I like jazz because I played jazz. I played trumpet growing up.
Sure.
But the news director heard me, Dave After Dark.
Yeah, there you go. I like that.
Yeah, really, really clever. And heard me and then kind of lured me into news. I started doing news and something sort of clicked. And I had a friend named Ed Clark in college at the end of my senior year who was into politics. And my dad had always kind of been into politics, was a heavy news consumer, and he was involved in politics at a really low level. And then it just sort of developed. And probably if I had I don't really have regrets, but I do wish I would have developed that a little bit sooner, that interest, because maybe I could have double majored in political science.
Sure.
Could have worked for a campaign. The helpful thing for me, I suppose, is I have clean hands. I've never worked for a Republican or a Democrat.
Yep.
Although my dad was both, so I guess technically I've
put in
worked
plenty
for each.
hours
Yeah,
for him.
I've worked for each. But I wish I would have had that. I wish I would have had that firsthand experience, probably. But it just sort of I did a little bit of politics at the radio station in St. Louis, and then I got my master's at the University of Missouri and was getting more of an interest there. Then I went to Montgomery, Alabama, and I covered politics there. And then I came here and almost from the get-go got to do politics here.
Nice. Very cool. So, and sorry, so when did you come to WHO?
I moved here in 2001.
2001. Okay. Very cool. I'm going to go back a little further back past 2001, and
Okay.
you may have touched on this briefly, but I always like to ask, tell me about your dreams as a kid. What did you want to be when you grew up?
Shortstop, St. Louis Cardinals.
Okay, so you
I can't
wanted
even let
to be
I
Ozzie
can't even
Smith.
let you finish the question. But I mean, I had no skill.
Yeah.
Like I've told my son this a bunch, and hopefully my late father will forgive me for sharing this story, but my dad did not let me play baseball. And my dad could be a bit of a conspiracy theorist, but he had it in his mind that coaches would not look out enough for kids and I'd get hurt. And so his rule was that I couldn't play baseball till high school. So it was too late.
Yeah,
Like we
yeah.
played in the neighborhood, but I mean, that doesn't count.
Sure.
And now it didn't help that I was a little runt. So I was definitely a late grower. So, I mean, I grew a lot in high school. So,
Sure.
I mean, starting as a freshman that wasn't like I was this big athletic
Right,
stud.
right.
I was killing the ball. So this just wasn't going to happen.
Sure.
And obviously I wouldn't have been good enough anyway, or I would have overcome that. But so I wanted to be a sports broadcaster. That's really that was what my dream became. And then it sort of morphed because of that one news director who kind of nudged me into news.
Yeah, that's great. Side note, but not completely. The announcer for the Cardinals when you were growing up.
Jack Buck.
Jack Buck. Okay, it was Jack Buck. Okay, so there was a guy.
Can I tell you two quick stories, or will it throw you off?
No, please.
My idol, right? That's who I grew up listening to. And if you're a Cardinal fan, you know about him. He's just super, super legendary. As a college kid, I had to interview somebody famous. I joked to my buddy, I'm going to interview Jack Buck. This is before I started at KMOX where Mr. Buck worked.
Sure.
And thinking it would not happen, right?
Right.
So I'm over at my best friend's house, Mark. The phone rings. His mom and dad were gone. He picks up the phone and he's like, "Hey, it's for you." And mind you, this is before cell phones. I'm like, "What?" And I get on the phone. "Dave, it's Jack Buck." Sorry, I don't do impersonations, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I about peed myself."
I'll
right?
bet.
And the Cardinals were on the road in San Diego, so he called me, and I had called the radio station. They got the message to him. Blah 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 blah. It worked. I could not. So he had called my house. My mom answered the phone.
He's over at Mark's
Yeah,
house.
he's over at Mark's house. Here's the number, and then so that's my first Jack Buck story. So I was just sweating buckets.
Yeah.
Unbelievable experience. I can't find a pencil. I can't find anything. I'm scrambling to
Yeah.
Mark like, "Oh my gosh,
Help me out.
So anyway, so that was my first experience with him. Then I work at KMOX. Now I worked overnights, so I would rarely ever see Mr. Buck. But KMOX every year had a big fancy like brunch thing called the State of the Station. And so it was at the Adamsmark Hotel across the street from where the radio station was. And I have no idea why, but I got put at his table.
That's
So
great.
like I'm across the table looking at him going, "Oh my gosh."
This is Jack Buck.
This is Jack Buck. And so, he's telling stories and I'm sure I'm just fanboying the whole
Right,
time,
right.
like, he was probably like, "What is wrong with this guy?" And I'm sure he had no idea who I was because we rarely ever crossed paths. And I just remember one of the coolest things I saw him do is there was this woman who was the server at the table who primarily was bringing juice, water, coffee, that kind of stuff. And she spoke Spanish as her primary language, and he's fluent in Spanish. And so he noticed that, picked up on it, I think, by her accent. So he starts talking to her in Spanish and was very, very pleasant to her. And then he called her back over and he reached out with his hand and slid her some money. And I don't know how much money it
Sure.
was. But I was like, dang, that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. So he ascended even higher on my
Yeah, like he was cool,
Risk-
but now he's a good
yeah,
person
yeah,
too.
exactly. So that was and sorry to interrupt your thought about Jack Buck, but so yeah, he's legendary to me.
Well, and I was going down a similar vein actually. Maybe you're familiar with him, but John O'Leary He's a author, speaker. He came and spoke at the Many Hands for Haiti business breakfast in October. He was burned very badly as a kid, and I had to search for Jack's name. That's why
Sure.
I asked. But I mean, he was like third degree head to toe. Didn't know if he was going to make it, and huge Cardinals fan. Jack came and visited him, and then came back. And came back again.
Yeah, I know
And
this. I remember.
I was
going
going
to
say you probably heard the story, just being a big
Yes.
Cardinals fan, and I just that really impacted me.
And
hearing
was he a boy when that happened?
yeah, like 7 years old.
That's what. Yeah, I remember this.
Yep. So anyway, you're talking about the Cardinals, and I went, hey, I remember that story from back in October.
For
And
sure.
Yeah. I mean, John, he's got a couple books, but one of them's called On Fire, and I'm just starting to read it, and I'm guessing he recounts the story with Jack. So
Nice.
he pretty amazing guy, it sounds like.
Yes. Filled us
Yeah.
with memories for sure.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what would you say your biggest, or what's been your biggest success, or what are you the most proud of?
My kids,
Okay, that's awesome.
hands down.
Yeah. Yep. I love that answer, by the way.
There is. It took us a little bit to have our first. We have a boy and a girl, so it took us a little while before we had our son. And we had some struggles and lost a child in between before
wow.
our daughter was born. So I think probably that makes you, appreciate it even more. But there is,
Sure.
I probably like my dad wasn't like mushy, wasn't a hugger, wasn't an I love you. I'm pretty sure he never told me that. But I always know, especially later in life, like I know he was very proud of us.
Mm-hmm.
Man, this is going to be an emotional conversation. I know this is going to be this way.
Sometimes that happens.
You're like Oprah, man.
I
What's
know.
going on?
I'm working on it.
But I think there is truly no greater joy than watching them interact. And my son is 11 and a half. My daughter is 6. So it's enough of a gap to where Hayden and Lila aren't rivals. And, and she really wants to be with him. And he's old enough now where he's like, but man, when they are clicking and getting along, and a lot of times right now it's when they're on their devices playing the same game or something, it is unbelievable.
Yep.
And sometimes she colors in pictures and stuff, and I love you and all this stuff. And oh my gosh, there's just, that is literally the best thing on earth.
Yeah. Yep. I if you turned around and asked me the same question, I would answer the same way. When you talked about why people do stuff and fascinated with how people treat other people, talking about our kids, that's like my main focus with them, and I try to I think they've got some of my lines already memorized, but it's like, I'm proud of you no matter what you do, but and I would love it if you were the starting, shooting guard, or if you were the lead in the play. But what would make me the most proud is to hear a teacher tell me that you stood up for the kid that, everybody else was picking on, and so just, hearing you say that, fascinated by how people treat people, I treat others, it's, especially in the world that you work in. There are a lot of on-camera, personalities versus off-camera personalities. So I'm sure that's I'm sure that's pretty interesting to see, see that and take that in.
It is, and I think that can be kind of a challenge too. You don't ever want to change in a bad way. Like, sure, there are days when it's cool that you're in the grocery store and somebody says, "Hey, you're the news guy," sometimes it's not as cool when you're running in there to grab, cold medicine because your daughter's been up sick or whatever it is. But how do I phrase this? You have to be true, whoever you are, you need to be true to who you are. Right.
Yep.
And in my business, there's a lot of ego. And as I always tell people, you have to accept that ego is part of my business, or you wouldn't do it. You do something else. Maybe you be a newspaper person or a reporter or whatever it is, or book writer, whatever it is. So clearly there's some kind of ego thing that, you're going to be on TV. But but also so what? Like it's a cool job. It's a crappy job some days. In the advent of social media, it's disgusting,
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
The last 3, 4, 5 years have been the worst ever. And I know I have friends who've gotten out of the business because of it. Like that, it's just gross. Yeah, the whole fake news era, and I cover politics, so it's nonstop barrage of I'm favoring this side or I'm favoring this
Sure.
side. And
Yeah.
sometimes when I feel like sparring a little, I'm like, I would like to connect you
And you.
and see how you two can make sense if you both think that I'm leaning on the other way.
Yes.
But I think it's also been a good sort of character challenge. And I have a colleague
I
here,
can only imagine.
Keith Murphy, our sports director, who's probably the most talented journalist I've ever worked with in my career. And he is truly the epitome of same dude off camera that he is on camera. He's just a remarkably thoughtful person and is very measured. And he deals with the same stuff. You're a Hawkeye fan. You're a Cyclone fan.
I literally was
He's
going to
not either
bring
one.
Keith
He's not
Murphy
from
up
here.
when you were talking about that.
Yeah.
The stuff I see on his page, I'm like, he's reporting the news.
It-
Shut up.
And he didn't grow up here, so he doesn't have the bias that, you
Sure.
grew up because your dad or your mom was
Yeah.
this, but he's been a good sort of guide star. And I remember one day a couple years ago, he texted me because I kind of went down the rabbit hole as somebody was hammering me on Twitter, and I was kind of coming back, and probably one of the things I said was a little too biting. And he just texted me and just said, hey, you may want to take a breath. That's not really your personality. You're starting to go the wrong way. And I read it. I'm like, oh, man, you're right. And that was sort of a good course correction. And I think it was more, you go a little bit, and then you look at it and you're like, oh, gosh, I don't want to be that way.
Right.
And it's hard. There are some days you really want to tell them off, but that's not who I want to be. I don't want my kids to see me behave that way.
Sure.
And I just don't want to be that.
Yeah.
So, but there are days.
Yeah. Oh, I
for
can
sure
only
there are
imagine.
days.
But it's interesting to hear you say that. I mean, not that I didn't expect it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I just, because I feel the same way about social media, and I'm not a public persona, you know. But one thing that popped into my head while you were saying that is both my kids want YouTube channels. And we're letting
They
Ian,
all do that.
right?
age.
I know. But so Ian has one, but we have it.
Keep it private.
Yeah, so you can't get comments. And he's like, but I can't grow my viewership if I don't have comments.
No,
and I'm
that's
like,
so hard.
dude, you're 10 years old. I am not ready to expose you
Yep.
to that. Jerks. I'm trying to think, okay, what word? I'm censoring myself there.
I know, but there's almost no way to
Yeah.
to explain it until they experience it.
right.
But it's crushing.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm not ready for you to have to
Right.
deal with that at 10 years old. Like,
Right.
I mean, I don't know that if the podcast keeps going well and I do elevate to somewhat of a
Mhm.
public persona, I don't know if I can deal with
It's
it.
hard.
You know, so I don't want him or her to have to do that. You
For
know,
sure.
as kids.
For sure. Yeah, that makes it so hard. And most people are good. And that's what I tell my kids, because they'll see stuff on the news and they don't watch a lot of the news. But I mean, like I said, my son's 11 and a half, so he's aware of bad stuff.
Yeah.
And I've been telling him this for a long time, both of them, that in my mind, most people are good. And I always tell them 99% of people are good. It's probably not quite right, but just so they understand that sometimes really bad stuff happens.
Sure.
But just because it's on the news doesn't mean that it's common and it's happening all over the place. You're
Yep.
still safe. We're still here for you. And I think comments are a reflection of that, but it's the passion that's behind those comments. And a lot of times it's the haters who are going to go out of their way to put stuff
Right.
out. There's one guy in particular on Twitter who is constantly trying to bait me. And I look at it and I'm like, he's got 40 something followers, right? And I'm not picking on the guy, or he's an anonymous troll, so I don't know if it's a man or woman.
Sure.
But that's when I have to tell myself, all right, Dave, let's take a breath here.
You're about the only one that's actually seeing this.
Exactly. I mean, he gets under my skin and he's constantly trashing my reputation and integrity and everything else. But I'm like, but what's the value of getting in some kind of fight here?
Right.
None. Literally
Right.
none. Especially with somebody who's anonymous.
Yeah.
And I just don't. So I totally get, you got to be careful about comments and everything else. And that's
Yeah.
I don't want my kids exposed to that yet
No.
either.
No. So how shift gears a little bit. How did you come to the spot of writing your first book? Talk a little bit about that, because I'm guessing some people that are listening are either starting down that course, or that's a dream,
Sure.
or maybe they're right in the middle of it.
I'm not sure how many years I thought about it, to be honest with you. So this would not be a lesson in productivity. This would
Fair
be
enough.
the opposite. Maybe that should be my next book.
Right.
How not to write a book. At our My wife had a townhouse when we got married in West Des Moines, and we lived in this townhouse, and under the stairs there was the big closet, right? So in the 2008 presidential election, I just kept stuff. That was a fascinating election.
Oh yeah.
Because it was a double open one, so no incumbent Republican, no incumbent Democrat. So we had a gazillion candidates here, and I moved here in 01, so I missed the 2000 race. I was here in 2004, but George W. Bush was the incumbent and didn't have to do a ton here. So I covered primarily the Democratic side. So 08 was the crazy one, insane, nonstop.
bet.
And we didn't have kids then, and we got married during that campaign. At the time, my wife worked for the CBS station in town, so we were kind of rivals, and she did some politics too. Anyway, so I was starting to think about doing a book, so I would just print stuff and keep stuff, and just kept putting it in there, putting it in there, putting it in there. And she was just annoyed with it because it was just a big pile of crap,
Right,
just super
right.
high. And what are you ever going to do with any of this? Well, in the end, I'm like, okay, fine. So I got rid of it because there was no practical way to do it.
Sure.
So then to move to the next cycle, 2012, I think that's when I was a little more serious about it. And maybe we had our son by then, and maybe I was starting to kind of prioritize stuff a little bit, a little bit more about organizing, having a plan, because I'm not one of those people that 5 years from now I want to do this 10 years from now.
Sure.
Which is not a good character trait, probably. So that one I just decided, all right, now I have more of a plan. But it took me about three. I needed to focus 3 different times, kind of. I couldn't quite tell where the book was going to go, and my wife's the one who helped me figure it out. And then by the third one, I'm like, all right, I got it.
Yeah, cool.
So then it worked.
Very cool. So, but it wasn't like hey, since I was 18, I'm going to write a book.
Nope, no way.
Okay.
No,
all right.
It was just kind of a later in life thing. I think there was just so much stuff. It was the 08 presidential cycle, but that's probably, there's just so much stuff we get to experience. But the nature of daily news is that you're always working for the next newscast, and my station does a ton of news. So it's constantly the next one, the next one, the
Sure.
next one. And you don't always get the chance to kind of step back and sort of process and kind of analyze, like, all right, what's happened here?
See the forest through the trees, as they say.
Yeah, for sure. And so the first book I did was maybe more looking back at the craziness that happened in 2012 for the caucuses here in Iowa. And then the second book, Donald Trump was such a dominant force.
Right.
And that one was more of an experiment sort of for me. I kind of got to do more analysis. I don't do opinion at all, except for baseball. But I wanted to share a little bit more of my experiences and what I learned, what I saw, what things were like.
Sure.
So that one honestly was kind of more fun to write.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. The analysis versus, opinion.
Yeah, and it can, there's a fine line to it, I suppose, too. But I really, I always tell people, and I didn't used to talk this way, but I think with age, maybe some of this starts, setting in a little bit. But I mean, we all have biases.
Right.
The challenge is acknowledging them and then trying to make sure that they're not apparent in your work. And, sort of in this fake news sort of criticism culture, people are able to right now follow and seek whatever information they want.
Right.
And so they're not sitting there watching the news as they used to, trying to hear the information from all sides and whatever, and then figuring out what they believe. You can silo yourself both with your friends, your work, your media, everything.
Unfortunately.
And if what they see and hear don't echo whatever their beliefs are, then
That's
some
fake.
some people will fire off, well, that's fake.
Yeah.
So that's obviously very challenging.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where we are, though.
Yeah. Well, and I think listening to you talk about the book and a condensed version of the process,
Mm-hmm.
I think for the listeners, what at least one of my takeaways is be aware of what's around you. I mean, you were working in politics, but you have this unique experience in Iowa that a political person at a I don't know, I assume Des Moines a mid market,
Yeah.
A mid market in another state
Would
likely
never
doesn't have because you have
or a large market,
or even a large market
Yeah.
for that matter.
That's
That's
right.
a great point. You've got the caucus here that a lot of places don't. So,
Right.
little nugget for the listeners, what's unique, and that's not necessarily for just writing a book. As you're seeking that, if you're still trying to figure out what that passion is, what's unique around you. Pay attention to your environment, if you will.
No, that's for sure. And I'm not business smart enough to remember what this book was, but who wrote about you have to do something 10,000 times to be an expert? Am I making that up?
No, but I'm not going to grab it on the spot either.
Everybody right now is just yelling at this. Hey, idiot, it's blah.
Dummies.
Exactly. See, if you had comments on here, they could post it in the comments, right? Whatever that was, though. But I think some of the, the repetition going through all these cycles, but that bottom line, that is one of the most appealing things about living in Des Moines this long. And when I'm speaking to groups, I always joke about this, that I signed a 2-year and 1-month contract just because that's the way it worked out when
Sure.
I started here in 2001. And it took a little while, but I was dating somebody, my wife, before she was my wife, was dating somebody. So it took us a little while to get together. But anyway, so obviously she's a huge reason why I stayed too.
Sure,
So I should
sure.
probably put that at the top of the list. But what Des Moines has now, look, the winters suck sometimes.
True.
They can be pretty long.
Right.
And so my in-laws who live in Tampa are especially appealing in
Yes.
January.
Yes.
But it really has so much. Now, it doesn't have mountains and beaches and all kinds of stuff. It has other stuff.
Yeah.
So it's a great mid-sized city where the crime's not really bad. The schools are pretty decent. You don't have these long commutes primarily. You're not sitting in traffic, all this kind of stuff. And honestly, in the time I've lived here, there's been a lot of extras
Right.
that have really made it a lot better place to live. But as the reporter living in Des Moines, I've been able to do everything.
Yeah.
So I get to do state government coverage of the legislature, the governor, members of Congress, all that kind of stuff. And then we have the caucuses all the time. So it's sort of the best of all of these worlds without having to live in LA, New York, or DC and dealing with what comes with that.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to that lifestyle. But especially as my kids are young, the thought
Bingo.
of like sitting in a car for an hour and a half each way to work
Ugh.
I just can't fathom it.
No.
I really can't. And so this is sort of offered everything, but I'm not stupid. Like I'm aware that a lot of people would love to be doing what we get to do here. And I think that self-awareness is important. So you never want to lose sight of that.
Right.
And I think the longer I've been here, the more I try to appreciate each caucus cycle, each election, each whatever, because you never know how long it's going to last.
Right. Right. We are quickly running out of time, I should say. Dave's got a political call he needs to make, but
I do.
before we wrap up, I got 2 more things I want to ask you.
Okay.
So I'll be quick. I always love to ask about books, and I'll say, hey, what are your 3 favorite books? Or
I'm terrible at these.
if you can even think of one book that might be good for someone who is starting to seek that passion or start going after that. And if that isn't going to work, then how about you just 1 or 2 that you've read recently that you really liked? And then I'm not putting you on the spot for your favorites.
I'm reading the 1619 Project right now. Controversial book for some people. It explores the history of slavery.
Oh, wow.
And it was a New York Times project. It's heavy. There's a lot of bad stuff in our history, but I think it's as a middle-aged white guy, I think it's very helpful to read that, because it has been part of discussion with critical race theory, and I won't go super deep on politics here, but that's
Sure.
been something in the news the last 6 months or a year that Republicans especially have been criticizing. So it is super deep, and it talks about some really bad stuff. Is the short of it.
Yeah.
But I think it's also helpful. And I will say I am a book reader in spurts.
Me too.
I have tons of books at home, which is embarrassing. We moved in the fall of last year, and so now we have sort of bookshelves in our living room, and we put a lot of them out, and I'm like, my gosh, haven't read,
Yep.
because
Yep.
I get all these books, and just with kids and stuff,
Oh, it's hard.
and I work a lot normally, but so that's been the last like 6 months. I've probably committed more to reading, and I brought my book on the trip with us that we just took. But it's like 400 pages.
Right.
So, I mean,
It's gonna take a little bit.
It's going to take a while. So
Yeah.
yeah, I tend to go toward nonfiction.
Yep.
Those kind of things, because everything sort of kind of comes back to me for that.
Yeah. Well, Dave, I really appreciate your time today. If listeners have follow-up questions or want to follow you, what's the best way to connect with you? Is it website or social media? What's best for you, or email?
All the above is good. On Twitter, I am the letter I, Dave Price. Really clever.
Yep.
By the way, get two-factor authentication, because I got hacked about a year ago. The hacker got in there and locked my account and eventually connected me with this Australian gamer.
Oh, geez.
It was insane. And so wiped out all my followers, everything. So the last year has been super frustrating. The hacker reached out to me, and we DM'd for a while, and he explained, hey, I got your password from the dark web. It had something of your station from a long time ago with some passwords. I don't use that for my email or anything anymore, but I did back when I started on Twitter a decade ago or whatever.
Yeah.
And he just said he needs the followers, and I didn't understand half of it. But
Sure.
Anyway, as a sidebar. So now I had to start over.
Two-factor authentication, everybody.
I am a believer now. And I probably have maybe a fourth of the followers I once did. I mean, it sucks.
Yeah, that
it
does
sucks
suck.
because I guess it's a vanity thing about how many followers you get, but like I use that for news.
Right.
Like you can DM privately that way.
Yep.
And so it's super frustrating, but yes, I very much believe in more security now.
Right on.
So that's always good. And then, I have a website that I use for, my book stuff and for speaking gigs and all that kind of stuff. And that you can either do caucuschaos.com is the main one there. I'll probably tinker with that as the third book comes out, because that one's going to break the Caucus Chaos tradition. So I can have that.
We ran out of time. We didn't talk about the third
That's what we
book.
call a tease.
Yeah,
in my
I
business.
like it. That's a tease right there, ladies and gentlemen. Well, like I said, I know Dave's got to get on a call. Dave, thank you very much for your time
Thank
today.
you. It's been great.
Been fun talking with
For
you.
sure.
Thanks for joining again along on this journey. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the show. Tell your neighbor, your coworker, your best friend, tell them about it, and let's get them along on the ride too. Have a great day, everybody.
If you have questions or would like to contact us, please check out the show details for contact information. Thanks for listening to the Pursue Your Passion podcast.